Hello and welcome to the Mysticast, where you join Jack Stafford and Deborah Littleboy, members of the Aetherius Society, the cosmic religion for the Aquarian Age, as we break down the barriers between religion, science, metaphysics, and mysticism, all of which are really only aspects of the self-same quest for truth. Please note, this is an independent program not produced or fact-checked by the Aetherius Society. Today, our guest is Rex Bear of the Leak Project. Hello, Rex.
Hey, thanks for the invite. It's great to be here.
Well, actually, I've been a fan of yours for a while now, and I've followed you since you had an interview with Richard Lawrence, our president.
Yeah, I think we've done 2 shows, actually. He's a great guy.
You did an amazing interview. You really listened so well, and you asked great questions, and you're really probing. It's one of the best I've seen him do.
Checks in the mail, man. Thank you. Much appreciated. Well, it was an honor. I mean, it was one of those, when you meet people that you have similarities with and you have certain things you can kind of connect on, it's like we've known each other forever. And we probably have, I've been thinking about that lately. How many times have you met somebody or you first meet them and you question like, well, have we met before?
Wow, we all have. Oh, you question everything, Arthur. Maybe for listeners that aren't familiar with your show, it's a bit like Coast to Coast. That maybe you could give a short introduction about yourself and how you came to the YouTube game.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I've always been into alternative fields of study, and I was talking about this kind of stuff with my previous jobs. So whether I was, in the break room at lunch or during work, I would be talking about similar things. And so when YouTube came out, I met some people that said, "Hey, Rex, you're doing Blog Talk Radio, you're doing round show radio shows or round table shows on Godlike Productions. Have you looked into YouTube?" And I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And I started off with a model similar to Coast to Coast. I'm a huge fan of Coast to Coast, George Nuri, Art Bell, Richard Surrett, and a lot of the different alternative media platforms. So that was one of the inspirations for Leak Project. And then the further I got into it through the years, I've interviewed many of the same people that have been on Coast to Coast and other platforms. And I've learned so much about these fields of study, extraterrestrials, whether or not they're real, how much of it is psyops, and what is the origins, and then the mythology and the scriptures and the hermetics and the latest technologies. All of this stuff seems to have a nexus point where it all connects. And for some reason, I think I was just born interested in this kind of stuff. So it was a pretty smooth transition going to doing podcasts. I probably had close to 100 different jobs in my, and now, so everything from landscaping to selling phone book covers over the phone, a lot of really difficult things. And one of the soulless jobs that I had, actually, I wouldn't say soulless, but pretty close to it, was when I was in my mid to late 20s and I got into timeshare sales. And I didn't know much about it, but everyone's like, "Rex, you should get into timeshare." I'm like, "Oh, what is it?" And so I got into it and I realized these people that I was working with, they were so above and beyond what I was able to do at that point as far as getting the sell, that it kind of, I don't know, it really humbled me, because up into that point, everything that I had done, I was pretty much the top of my game. I have all these ridiculous plaques to show for it that I've got tucked away. And it kind of it broke me out of my mold. And I had a out-of-body experience. I had a couple of out-of-body experiences when I was in my mid-20s. I think I was 27, 28. And I didn't even mean to. So, and this was during the time that I got into this job. And I was going to sleep. I popped out of my body. It freaked me out. And at the time I thought, oh man, what if I get possessed by a demon or something? So I kind of, got back in my body, and then I started to fall asleep again. I popped out again. And it was, if you've ever had a real out of body experience, everything looks kind of the same, at least it did for me, but it was more shades of gray. And it made me get into other subjects and other fields of study. Because up into that point, I guess you could say I was kind of a strong Christian, as far as the modern day Christian, where you pray to Jesus, you ask for forgiveness, you believe what your religious leaders tell you, as far as, don't study magic because it's evil, astrology's evil, and some of these fundamentalist views where when you really start to study the Bible and hermetics and scriptures, a lot of it doesn't make any sense until you realize it's a form of control, because the original Christians and Gnostics, if you go way back, they were definitely into mind over matter and understanding the truth and wanting to get to the truth. And they would have to write these scriptures in metaphors and symbology so that they weren't just, hung up by the Romans at the time. And now people are looking at these scriptures as absolute fact and not metaphor oftentimes, and they're taking them completely literal. And I think that's where some of the disconnects are. And I'm not saying that they don't describe literal events, because absolutely they do, but so much of it is also metaphorical and compared to astrology and astrotheology and spirituality and secrets and codes, that it's really taken me down this rabbit hole of getting as much information as I can and understanding the true origins of why we're here. And then I started to study, get into the solar system, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, which I had a really cool synchronicity about. So in today's podcast, you had a specific name for the podcast, right? Like what the 9 steps to...
Yeah, the 9 freedoms. Yeah.
Well, I didn't realize that until after something was going into my head describing this whole podcast. And I wrote out the Council of 9. And I was like, well, why am I writing out the Council of 9? Because everything seems to be linked to 7. And then I'm like, well, there's the 7, and then there's the 2, the 7 and the 2, the duality. And then the duality makes the singularity. So the 7 actually makes the 10.
Well, stop, because Deborah's really into numerology. So you just going to get her excited with saying all these numbers.
Cool. Okay. Awesome. Let's hear about that.
Rex, you only had to say Council of 9. And I think if you'd look, my ears went... because there's a book called The Only Planet of Choice, which is channelings from the Council of 9, which which so correlate with the whole of our teaching. So I'm sort of to jump and can't even speak properly now, which I get when I get really.
Had you heard of that, Rex? You've heard of the Council of 9, or you just made it up?
I've heard of the Council of 9. I haven't studied it much. I've heard little bits and pieces of the Council of 9. It was just, for some reason, that really was coming into my head strong today. And so I wrote it down. You can see I got notes here. Well, I got the green screen, but up at the top there, I've got Council of 9. And then so that's interesting. It's very interesting. Yeah.
Deborah,
another synchronicity. Cool. Well, tell me more about the Council of 9.
Well, let me just say, Rex, before we came on air, I said to Jack, I'm going to sit very quietly, Jack, and not say very much at all. And he said, yeah, we'll wait and see how long that lasts for, Deborah. And then here we are, 5 minutes in, and it's just like, well, no, I think that you and I need to Rex, you and I need to get together and have a conversation outside of this, because otherwise the whole 50 minutes is going to go. And
give us a brief for people that want to hear about the Council of 9.
Well, it's obviously a pseudonym of a group of cosmic intelligences that were channeling through a group of terrestrials about the dangers of atomic splitting the atom, and they were sending people around the world to anchor in the light to keep the thing balanced. Now that's the first I ever heard about this, and then later move forward 6 or 7 years, I find the Aetherius Society, and then I learn again that the cosmic masters and the higher intelligences are moved around the planet to balance the energies, and so we've got this whole. And so then I've gone back to this One Planet of Choice, which is the book that sort of a combination of 3 or 4 different books of channelings before. And the parallels are so close that it's well, blew me away. So and I haven't heard about the Council of Nine. Haven't heard anybody say the Council of Nine for 7 years, and it's just made me go like everything's just gone. So and
Goosebumps. I got them too. Like the hair's standing up on my arms right now.
I honestly, I'm getting also. I very rarely feel my heart chakra expand outside my body, but it's here. It's right here.
Well, the two of you just stop it.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to send you a check too. Oh my gosh.
Yes, Jack Stafford.
Thank you so much.
Let me sing this.
That's cool. No, that's beautiful. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because that makes me feel better in many ways. Like, oh, maybe, there's something more to it than just it popping into my head like that. I find that wonderful. And so I guess let me get into the solar system, because that was kind of what you invited me on here for, was for the presentation of the solar system. I did a presentation.
Exactly. Yeah. You've seen this one. You're talking about also about type 2 planet and the soul trap. So yeah, like, because I see you're really thinking about this, this area of what we, how our, because if you believe in reincarnation, you've got to believe in a beginning and an end. No, you've got to be, and it's an evolutionary thing. So where have we come from? Where are we going? And I see you speaking to all these people, and you're extracting all this information. I also want to ask you how you discern. That's something I wanted to get onto later. But yeah, so tell us about the soul trap that you've been talking about.
I don't even know. We can look at it as a soul trap, or we can look at it as a soul opportunity. So it's so much of it is verbiage. Also, I think some people get into it, into a trap, and some people look at it as, okay, well, this is more than basic training. This is special forces training. This is to be the best that I can be. And, maybe you're training now for the Tour de France, and this is how you have to. If we can get through this, we can get through anything. But we're not going to be able to just jump into the best of the best. So depending on how you look at it, but even the term solar system, so solar system, our soul system. Does that mean that we're actually in a system that is designed to harness our soul and use our soul as an energy source? And I think there's a very real possibility that that's taking place. We're able to live our lives, but there's also something piggybacking off of us, something piggybacking off of it. And in this reality that we're in, everything has to feed. Everything has to have an energy source, or it dies. And even if you're a vegetarian, you're consuming a life essence. And so, like, where do we find that balance, and why is it like this? And I've been really trying to figure this out. And it seems as if it's a part of this, not only physical, but spiritual evolution, that some of us maybe got stuck here along the way. Some of us have chose to be here. But if you look at the planets and the way that the planets link to the chakras, as you brought up chakras, Deborah, which you can actually see your own chakras with certain technologies, even if you don't have the ability to see your aura on your own, you can go get a photograph. It's called Kirlian photography. And these cameras are designed to take photographs of your auras. And I've actually got a couple of photographs of my auras, and it's from several years ago. But the first one especially was like, I was stuck in my root chakra that day. The whole image was this dark burgundy, and it was linked to my root chakra. And I had a friend that had her photograph taken, a couple of friends, and you could actually see their chakras, not just the root chakra. You could see the different colors linked to the chakras, the details, and they look just like what the ancients were describing and portraying and drawing thousands of years ago. So how did the ancients know how to do this when they didn't have a Kirlian camera to see that? And then, clearly they were able to pick that up, I think, with mental abilities. But also, if we look at some of these ancient civilizations, they were far more advanced than what we're looking at today, even. And you've got two groups of thought, it seems like, typically. Oh, aliens did it all. Cavemen. There was cavemen and there were aliens. And they were like, oh, cavemen are in the caves, and the aliens come down and they make these megaliths. And then the cavemen are like, oh, they're gods. I think there could have been people out there, tribal, just like there are now, that would see that. But it was we were more advanced than what our own history gives us credit for. And if you look at these structures, the way that they were built and the way that they are built and the way that they're linked to specific pole stars, oftentimes, there was this transference of energy, and the energy would be information, but we could also communicate with Sirius, as an example. If you look at Orion's belt, and if you look at the Great Pyramids of Giza, the way that they're lined up, that area has a very real significance as far as the evolution of what we are, that we could link back before us, the gods that we refer to them as. It's the divine providence, I don't think even is so beyond what we can comprehend that we have to have a visual and something to understand the apex, but we don't really understand it. So we have to visualize it and come up with metaphors and symbology. But much of these scriptures that are written out were most likely written after a major cataclysm took place. And I think it's connected to the Younger Dryas event. But if we go back before then, this world was laid out with very high technology where they were tapping into electricity without having to use oil and lithium batteries, etc. They figured out a way to tap into this 0 point energy, and that would describe why we don't see smoke inside of the Great Pyramids and evidence of these fires, because they didn't need fires to have light. They had a completely different technology to do it. But something happened, major cataclysm that took place where they took off, and this whole world had to change. And I think it has something there. If you go back and you read the ancient scriptures, now let's go back to the ancient scriptures of Shamash. And Shamash is described as a star. Shamash is described as one of the major gods in ancient Sumerian mythology. And ancient Sumer and ancient Babylon, before the Bible, much of the Bible has adopted those scriptures and created this canon of scriptures that they actually adopted from the ancient Sumerians. So if we go to Shamash, Shamash is a sun, Shamash is a star, Shamash is a god, and then something happens where the name of Shamash is changed to Utu. But I think they're two separate entities. Utu is also considered a sun god in ancient Sumerian and ancient Babylon. So stay with me on this. If Shamash is a star, I don't think Shamash is the star that we have now in our sky. Something happened. If you've heard of the Purple Dawn, if you've heard of the Golden Age, these are connected to a time when the atmosphere wasn't blue, it was purple. We didn't have seasons the way that we do now. The earth wasn't tilted the way that it is now. And we had a longer lifespans. The animals were much larger. The plant life was much larger. Most people were much larger. And this is describing a time, like the Golden Age was literally a golden age. People were telepathic. They didn't need to communicate in language. Something like the Tower of Babylon is describing when whatever takes place changes even the human archetype to where now we don't communicate telepathically. We have to communicate with words, which created tribal warfare and problems and all sorts of bills and issues. You start communicating, you don't understand each other. Oh, there's another issue. Oh, you thought I said, you thought I was making fun of you, but really this person was giving that other person homage, but they don't understand it that way. So that's a lot of the problems we're dealing with now. But we go back to this great age, and most likely Shamash, like Saturn is most likely the remnants of Shamash. So Saturn was most likely an activated star, and we were most likely within a orbit of Saturn. We were connected to Shamash, which I believe is Saturn when it was a star. Something happens
Deborah wants
that
to say something. She's desperate to get in there.
Oh yeah, hop in, jump in.
Before I forget, just before I forget, we are told in our teachings that our body, this robot body that we all walk around within, is actually a replica of our solar system. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've got, let's take Saturn, because you were speaking about Saturn. We know that Saturn is the most evolved planet in our system, other than our sun. Okay, so we go all the way through our evolutionary path. We end up at Saturn. But before we go on to other things, Saturn is the structure of this whole universe. So in our body, it will be our skeleton and our teeth. And so we go on. So once we understand that all of the planets are actually within represented within our body. We can connect via parts of our body to each part of our solar system. We're not separate. And of course, we get all our energy from our sun, the creative force of our sun, and through our sun. And this is the important thing, right? Through our sun. So we're a solar system with and planets that support life for us to make our evolutionary journey, which is what you were saying about the microbes feed off of our body. We eat the plants, and we could get this whole cycle here on Earth. But we are all evolving. So then when we're done with our solar system and however billions, trillions, multi-zillions of quillions of lives from now, we then go on to either a bigger solar to bigger solar system or another galaxy, and so we because everything is only just one from one source, and it's all fractal. So what you're saying is making so much, is sense. What we're also told, see, I don't shut up once I start, Rex. What we're also told is that we get to this. We were on a planet which we call Maldek, which was also known as Lucifer. Okay, so and that's now our asteroid belt. We evolved and we blew it up. We blew up the whole planet. So all the life streams had to go somewhere in our solar system, when we shoved it all out of balance, like all out of kilter. And the only planet that was suitable to take us was Earth, a sentient being, the Mother Earth. And so the Lords asked her whether she would take us criminals from Maldek and support our evolution. So we came from, but because we'd done such a terrible thing, but they had to limit us so we had to start from the beginning again, if you want. So yeah, you've been like really bad. You're criminals. You've got to start again. No. This is not the way we do it. So then we grew up through the slime, and we got a civilization which we know as Lemuria. And it was beautiful, and we were advanced. We weren't in the same bodies as this, but we were working in harmony with a deep kingdom. And then we found out how to split the atom
again,
and blew it up. And we blew up the civilization, not the planet. We're not allowed to do that anymore.
I think the Earth turned on our axis as well and then got destroyed.
Yeah, that's where we went wonky.
Yeah. And then Atlantis.
Yes, so we blew up the civilization of Lemuria back to the slime of nuclear waste, and we had to crawl our way out of that, and we built the civilization of Atlantis. But all the while, every time we blew up something, we were limited from the sun's rays. So then they put on the ionosphere, or the ring past Not, which limited our access to the cosmic rays. And now here we are, Rex, you, me, and Jack, and everybody else at that stage where we're messing around with atomic bombs.
Does that tie in, Rex, with what you've heard, like Lemurius and Atlantis? I think it was 18 million years ago that Maldek was destroyed, which is now the asteroid belt.
So, like, as far as the numbers go, the timelines, I don't know. I've heard Tiamat, I think, is also another reference to the planet that was destroyed. And I have a theory on that. There's usually two groups of thought on this. One group of thought is the electric universe theory specific, where somehow Venus gets knocked out of orbit, or Shamash gets closer to Jupiter, and they start, like, this electrical arcing starts. Imagine static friction as an example, a whole bunch of static friction. If there's you get a bunch of static friction, you touch somebody, you shock them. Look up the Lichtenberg effect. If you look up the Lichtenberg effect, it is a perfect example of art. Like, you can create art with a Lichtenberg effect, and it's electrical arcing in wood as an example, and it looks identical to the Grand Canyon or the Canyonlands from a satellite view. And the traditional rule of thought is the Grand Canyon was most likely created over millions and millions of years of water erosion. And little bit, but if you actually ever go to the Grand Canyon, you'll realize that that's kind of silly to think that. But if you look at it from a satellite and you compare it to the Lichtenberg effect, you can see clearly that it's from electrical arcing, from major electrical discharge. Like the thunderbolt of the gods is an example that people hear about. Many of the symbols you will see in these gods, they're holding up a thunderbolt. And Zeus is a prime example, holding the thunderbolt of the gods. Zeus is connected to Jupiter, the largest planets in the sky. So the electrical universe theory is that somehow this disaster takes place that creates the Younger Dryas event and causes the Earth to basically half of it be on fire for thousands of years, from Venus getting knocked out of orbit or maybe even pulled out of Jupiter as the core because Saturn's getting closer to Jupiter. And all of these events take place. And then that's where the majority of the religions come from, and the gods and the goddesses.
But also thinking that these planets are living beings. We eventually evolve in, according to our teachings, consciousness accumulates, and eventually we amalgamate into larger and larger beings, and eventually we form planets. And the Mother Earth is the holiest being we've ever physically touched. It's a living goddess, and one day we'll evolve into a planet. One day.
Well, I mean, I certainly believe that Earth is a goddess and a part of the divine, theory, absolutely, the feminine aspect, and a very powerful living being that we oftentimes forget about. But as far as the electric universe theory goes, it's more along the lines of people are looking at it as just the universal effects, because these planets got too close and they caused electrical arcing, and then the people on Earth saw that, so they were attempting to understand it because their life went from amazing to pretty gnarly, and they had to go hide in caves. They lost their civilizations, and they didn't know how to describe it. So they, well, let's make gods, let's make goddesses. And even if you look at the stick man or the squatter man in petroglyphs around the world that people saw at the same time, it's most likely what they were watching take place in the heavens. So they glorified that. I'm not taking away from the very real aspect of divinity, but that's where the electric universe aspect is typically connecting the thought of why the Earth is the way that it is, why the asteroid belt is there, why Valley Marineris on Mars is the way that it is, but not necessarily aliens or extraterrestrials or a high-level civilization. The other side of the coin to that is they got blown up by us. We created this technology, kind of like Star Wars, where there's this Death Star or something similar to that, and we blow up a planet. And so now this is our karmic retribution where we have to, like you described. And you know what? I'm not sure 100% if one side is true or the other. I would be more along the lines of thinking that there's truths to both sides of this, because the Iapetus, if you look at Iapetus, which is one of the moons of Saturn, it looks identical to the Death Star portrayed in the film, but it also looks extremely artificial. And then if you look at Tiamat and these descriptions of how a planet blew up, it would take a heck of a lot of asteroids to blow up a planet like that. To me, that seems like a refined technology.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting you said that they're fake artificial satellites. There are many artificial moons built.
Like Luna, like the moon that we're looking at right now. Could very well be an artificial structure.
I've wondered that myself, but I know that we've definitely been told that one of the moons of Mars is actually a big satellite space station, if you want.
Phobos.
You've got me now on a roll. If Jack would allow my just to read something that I copied down when I heard it, because it just so resonated with me, and I keep it in my holy books now. This is a transmission. I'm only going to read a small bit from 3rd of December 1958 in Caxton Hall. It was given to us by an intelligence which pseudonym is Mars Sector 6. We're told is a Lord of Karma, or is a Lord of Karma now. And this is like a short history, what he gave to us through Dr. King in 1958, Claxton Hall. This is what we got. Are you ready? Some 18 million of your years ago, when Adamic man first walked the surface of a virgin world, he found natural perfection here upon your earth. He invited other less evolved beings to come to his sanctuary. They came with the foul disease called materialism, and they started but surely the involution of Adamic man into terrestrial man. The great continent of Lemuria fell into atomic dust. The results of this was excessive radiation, which caused grotesque mutation for generations. Out of the slime evolved, through pain, Atlantis, but also evolved that other, spawned in darkness, working forever so, like the evil that it was, took man away from the simplicity of the law, which was and is God, taught man how to receive so-called mental stimulation by creating the animals by very personal contact with his own mutilated creation, and Atlantis fell into ruins. The floodwaters eventually settled down, and gradually from the slime of mutation rose man as you now know him. Through eons of trials and tribulations, he came to the position he now occupies this day. Upon that same crossroads where stood the involved Adamic man millions of years ago, you stand at this same spot this very night. Verily, O terrestrial man, do you stand at the crossroads of your self-destruction or your salvation? That's so strong for me. I cannot, I'm surprised I got through that without blubbing. So that was given in 1958 as a sort of like an overall of like the main points on your journey to here. Now what you're going to do about it, chaps? Type of in Deborah speak, and that
there was there's this book that also sums it up quite well. The 9 Freedoms sums it up quite well. It's the transmissions. The Dr. King they go through the 9 freedoms. Bravery, love, and service. Those are the first 3 freedoms. Bravery is essential. Service is essential. That's what all the beings are doing. The sun is serving. The planet is serving. You go up to higher classrooms, you still have to serve those below you. And love, obviously. And then after that, it's enlightenment, cosmic consciousness, and then ascension. So raise the Kundalini, master materialism. And then you go on to, then you can choose to stay on in the spiritual hierarchy of Earth. The Great White Brotherhood as an ascended master, or you go on to interplanetary existence and you serve on another planet. You're learning all the time in another classroom, and then Saturnian existence. That's the 8th classroom, and that's you really evolve into an ovoid shaped being who can have something like over 1,000 different, occupy 1,000 different points in space and time, and then finally solar existence. And those are the 9 freedoms.
Interesting. Okay.
Then you become a planet.
That's actually similar to some of the LDS teachings about the celestial kingdom. I believe if you reach the celestial kingdom, then you can become your own planet, essentially. But I haven't studied it enough to get into details on that. One thing
LDS, what does that stand for?
The celestial kingdom?
LDS, yeah.
Oh, LDS, Mormon, the Mormon religion.
Oh, Mormon. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. But also, the more studying I've done on the Mormon religion, a lot of that was from the Freemasons. So Joseph
it's all
Smith,
linked, isn't it? All these.
Yeah,
trees.
he was a rogue Freemason, and he basically took off and anyway,
Really?
there's a lot of stuff to that. But yeah, which is interesting because you brought up the universe, right? The universe is you.
It's a living being. Yeah.
in reverse. So yeah, it's
The galaxy's a
absolutely-
living being. Yeah.
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 Yeah. But what if Saturn was actually a star at one point and a type 2 civilization have you heard of the Birkeland current? Do you know what a Birkeland current is?
No.
Essentially, the universe is filled with these Birkeland currents. And if you study electricity, the Birkeland current is a major force of electricity, right? If we live in a universe that's essentially electric and the sun is emitting, is electric in essence, then if Saturn was a star and it was an activated star, and you've heard of a Dyson sphere. This is where the theory comes of a type 2 civilization with the moon that we see it, with our carbon beings, essentially the way that we are built and the way that we are designed, and then Saturn, the way that it is now. So was there a time when Saturn was a star, much larger, being Shamash? I believe so. Something happens, and then now there's these rings of Saturn. And if you're a type 2 civilization, people have all heard of a Dyson sphere where you're harnessing the energy of a sun or of a star, but you have to create this sphere around the star. That's a lot of matter. That's a whole lot of matter. What if you could do it in a way where you're actually tapping into that current? You're tapping into that electrical current of the universe or of the solar system. You're tapping into it and you're harnessing that energy by creating rings instead of this big giant Dyson sphere that surrounds the whole thing. No, you're doing it in a much more efficient manner. You're doing it with these rings. And I believe that they use a combination of nanotechnologies and artificial general intelligence that we would look at as like in these massive possible spaceships. If this is just a theory, but I'm not the only one that thinks about this.
Have you heard of in the Bible, the Ancient of Days? Have you heard that mentioned?
No.
The Senate Kumar is referred to in the Bible as the Ancient of Days, and he came here because your type 2 civilization idea is that we're created by somebody. No, somebody made these bodies for us. And that is, there are people helping us to design these bodies, but there was the Senate Kumar, and that they're in Shambhala, and the masters from I think the Senate Kumar was the Lord of the Flame from Venus, the holder of the. And so, yeah, there are these beings who help us, create us, but they're all in service to us. We're not, it's not the Matrix where we're all in tubes so people can come and eat the cows, like you said. It's not. They're not.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's just they're all like we
I
are.
hope not.
We are the kindergarten. Because the electromagnetic spectrum is a good way to understand it. Every point on the electromagnetic spectrum is a consciousness, exists matter. So a different realm, that when we die, we go to a different realm, which is right here. We stay physical, but we're just a different frequency. And it's the same on the other planets. They are all inhabited by much more advanced beings at a higher vibration than us. So all this, that's how everything, it's the multiverse. It can all exist at different levels in the same space.
Rex, I have a question for you on Saturn. If Saturn was a star, a sun, so Saturn was at one stage was a sun, how did it get, in what you've investigated, how did it get back to be below our sun? How did that, I've missed that connection somewhere.
Okay, so thank you for asking. So let me see here. You've got this like electrical current that's going through different, like the universe has these filaments that are connected. You can look at a computer rendition of the entire universe, and it looks like neurons of the brain. And if you take what is called a Birkeland current, and if you study the electric universe, from the research that I have done, there is this electrical current that activates a star, like a light bulb. And the light bulb is activated, it's turned on, so now you've got a star. You've got this light in the sky that creates these incredible filaments and plasma and light and life, and it's just, it's amazing. But you could turn that off as well. And you could also, if you figure out a way to tap into that energy, have you studied, do you know what a Dyson sphere is?
No,
Never-
sorry. No,
No, that's okay. Let me give you the
Somebody
exact
without-
definition of the Dyson sphere, because this will make a lot of sense when I explain this. So a Dyson sphere is a hypothetical megastructure that encompasses a star and captures a large percentage of its solar output. This would be considered like a type 1 civilization that could go in and the original theory about, well, gee, if there's extraterrestrials out there, how come we don't see all these Dyson spheres? That's one of the what's that specific? There is a formula that talks about why we don't see ETs. And one of the questions is, well, why don't we see these structures in space with a telescope? If there's so many ETs out there, why aren't we seeing them every time we look out in space, right? And the Dyson sphere would be as the way they explain it. And I'm telling these people, look, if you're a type 1 or type 2 civilization, you're going to go beyond that Dyson sphere. And if you want to harness the energy of a star, you're not going to need to surround it with a structure. You could do it by tapping into that current that's activating that star. So if Saturn is the current of our solar system, it's like the root of our solar system. And most solar systems have binary stars, right? You've heard of the dark star, and there's a lot of theory of, what is Nibiru and what is Planet X and Planet 9 and da-da-da-da-da. But most, like if you look in the stars, there's these binary stars that oftentimes work together, or trinary stars. And we're told that we're in this this single star system, and we could very well be, but oftentimes Saturn itself is referred to as the dark star. And many people and the ancients looked at Saturn as like Saturday. The Jewish tradition typically worships on Friday and Saturday, Saturn Day. Sunday is the Sunday. Well, the cube, the Metatron cube, that is portrayed in many symbols, especially Jewish tradition, and the black cube, what is that called? That's on the menorah, not the menorah. The menorah is the 7 lampstands, which is also seen in a petroglyph that's 7,000 years old, of the menorah on a stickman figure, which is kind of what I was describing to you earlier about these petroglyphs that were etched in stone when everybody was seeing the same thing. A lot of these symbols were seen in the heavens, and then they deified them. But Saturn itself, being the root of our solar system, if it was a star, and the ancients knew how to tap into that and create this Dyson sphere without surrounding the star completely, but creating these rings, something happens that causes a major cataclysm in our solar system. We see evidence of life on Mars, of these ruins like the city of Cydonia, where you can clearly see a face and pyramids around it. And then NASA comes out later with CGI animation. They're like, oh, it was just a light reflection. It wasn't real. And then the original satellite image, you can see it's something there. And then they go and show you CGI. And it's like, well, it's not real. It's real, folks. That's an old city. Camp of Mars, Cairo in Egypt. Cairo literally breaks down to Camp of Mars. The fallen angels, they're not fallen angels. And I would be very careful to call an angel a fallen angel, because you don't want to do that. But anyway, they could have been a highly advanced civilization that actually came from Mars. And before that, they could have been on Sirius. I believe that this Earth was colonized by light beings from Sirius. That's my theory. Sirius, Osiris.
But what
Horus,
about, because on this planet, every you lift up a rock, there's a life form under it. You go on everything. Yeah. So
the rock is alive.
Yeah. So
yeah,
when you're talking about, all these that we're colonized from, there's Andromeda and all these other, faraway galaxies, and how did they get here? But what about all the planets in our solar system? I mean, surely they're all inhabited by much more intelligent life forms than us, if you go with the multiverse idea.
Well, why would you? Now, this is one thing that I would say, I would ask you. You brought that up a minute ago, and I was kind of like, well, why are they superior? Why is it obvious that there's a superior species on another planet that we can't even see? I'd really like to know your thoughts on that, because I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit.
Well, because, you take ghosts and UFOs and the thing that connects them and the life between lives, where do you go when you die? Because you're concentrating now on the solar system, but where do you go to when the life between lives? Yeah, I mean, have you a theory on that?
Like, I think our frequency, our soul signature is going to depend on that. I think that our past experiences are going to be compass to where we go next, a map. And it could be somewhere, it could be back here again. It could be another dimension. It could be another planet. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I think that's a great question. I want to know. At the same time, I'm scared to know. It's interesting. You brought up a minute ago, you said, we're not in pods. And I hope not. But man, if you've ever had a Salvia Divinorum experience, oh, dude, I felt like I did it to have an out-of-body experience, and I felt like I went into hell, literally went into hell. And then I started to research the Bhava Chakra and the Samsara and the Wheel of Life and the Yama, which is this giant demon that overlooks the entire Wheel of Life, which goes back thousands of years. And there's these different, you feel like the hell realm, the wandering ghost realm, the human realm, the animal realm, the diva realm, the demigod realm, and they're all based on karma in the center point. But the only way out of this circle is in the human realm, which is really interesting. But there's this Yama, this giant demon that overlooks the entire thing, and I saw that, and it's scared
something like
the hell out of me.
The Netflix series,
I don't know,
the latest one. I forget what.
The Wheel of Time.
Right. So going back to your question about why do we believe that there are people on the other planets that are more evolved? If that's what I was hearing you say,
yeah.
What my thought came in of a description we had of a mothership. So for the ships that they use that are mostly built, we're told, on Mars. But there's a description on the mothership, which I find fascinating.
There's a book, Life on the Planets, which we can send you afterwards. It's out of print, but I can send you PDF.
Okay.
The cigar-shaped vehicles are from 1,000 yards to 5,000 miles in length. They may carry up to 7,000 smaller scout patrol vessels, so what we would used to know as flying saucers. The largest of the motherships may take deep space probes into other galaxies. They are propelled by magnetic propulsion units, which exert an equal thrust upon every atom of substance within the craft, thereby cancelling out effects of gravitational force. They are constructed, this is a bit I love, they are constructed of organic metal, which is susceptible to the thought emanations of the operators. This metal is self-reproducing. That is something out of Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
So, and I really believe that our sci-fis are taken from these channelings and are sort of made palatable for the average man to start accepting, like the unacceptable. So metal that is manipulated by thought. Now, we don't have anything like that on this. We have a rocket that only got as far as the moon, and yeah, and some people say that that didn't even happen, but I'm not going into that. So that is why I believe that the people in our solar system, entities in our solar system, are of a higher intelligence or more evolved than we are. Because I've only got to look around to see, we're using vehicles that spit out poison. Everything about us is crude and primitive, and yet this is what's described here from a source that I have chosen to accept as truth, and I've done some delving, but I'm not pushing that down your throat at all. But I'm just saying that for Deborah, I've done my due diligence, and I believe.
Well, that goes to the question I wanted to ask, Rex and Davina, like, how do you discern? You have hundreds of guests on your show. How do you discern truth?
Thanks for asking. I think a lot of it has to do with my body language. You watch somebody's body language, you listen to their verbiage, and you really listen and watch. And then my own intuition will, based upon the research that I've done and the studying that I've done with neurolinguistic programming, body language, and just thousands of interviews, and all the jobs that I had before this, I can get a pretty good idea on if somebody's being legit, if somebody truly believes what they're saying. Now, this is one thing that I got kind of tired of. That I didn't at first I thought was kind of cool. Like at first, like these people are telling me these huge stories about places that they had gone and, things that they have done and experienced. And then years and years and years of more interviews, I'm like, okay, some of these people are legit and some of these people are just telling me stories. They're like, well, I got this great story. And there's been people that have been on my show that I felt like they were just reading through a script. And I'm like, wait, hold on a second. Let me ask you a question. And they're like, well, let's get back to the script. Like, I know you're trying to, be important or whatever, but it's really kind of off-putting for the community because there are so many genuine people out there like yourselves. They're looking for the truth. You're not forcing your ideas and your beliefs on others. You're sharing that. And that's beautiful. I love that. It's great to share ideas with each other, but to come up with this huge story, like you got abducted, you went to Mars, and then you came back and they put you in a different body, and now you're overweight and you have glasses, but you were a fighter pilot for 30 years on Mars. And then oh, what did you do on Mars for 30 years? I saw spiders. Oh, really? You saw spiders? That's all you can tell me? Stuff like that. It's brought a lot of discernment to me, right? Where I'm like, okay, I'm going to question this, and I'm going to question why they gave me that answer and how that's valid. And it appears that so I know people personally that have had experiences with non-human beings. I myself had, when I was just like I was a toddler, and I still remember this almost like it was yesterday. I'm in my crib, I'm looking at these beings that are looking at me, and I don't know what they were, but when I grew up, my whole life growing up, I thought that we had life-size Star Wars figures that were, if you've seen Return of the Jedi in Star Wars, there's this scene where there's these insects that are playing instruments in the Jabba the Hutt scene, and they're like, they're kind of insect-looking things. That's what I thought I saw in my crib in the first house we live in my whole life. And then I asked my parents when I'm like in my 20s, I'm like, did we have life-size Star Wars figures when I was growing up in the house? And they're like, what are you talking about? They had no idea what I was talking about. And so I described the room to them, and we moved out of that house by the time I was 2. So I described the room to a T, and there was something there looking at me. They didn't take me anywhere. They didn't do anything to me, but they were just observing me, and they weren't human. But it doesn't necessarily mean they were extraterrestrials or aliens. They were something. And then I've talked.
Because there are different UFO researchers, for example. Some people just specialize in abduction. Some people just specialize in like a secret space program, and they look for, because they do specialize in each area, they look for correlations, and these things repeat. And so, oh yeah, okay, I've heard that story 10 times from 10 different people. That's because people also ask us, like, you don't know, man. How do you know Jesus from Venus? How do you know there's life on the other planets? And with us, it's like, we've studied different things and they all correlate. Like you said, the Latter-day Saints there, that correlates, and then bits in the Kabbalah, and then there's the Vedanta and the Vedas and the Upanishads, and it's in the Bible, all these, it all correlates, and it's kind of like the Theosophical Society came before, and it all kind of stacks on top nicely, and it makes logical sense. But I can't explain it to you now in a 50-minute podcast, but that's how we discern. So
yeah. And synchronicity is another great, to me, when you have something that connects, it's like, okay, then that is divinely inspired. I believe that's the divine speaking to us in a way that
we're all divine sparks. That's something that really struck with you said that, and that's really in our teachings as well. We are all divine sparks. We're all aspects of the one.
And we're like fractaling out.
We can all connect to the same mind. Now I know that before I come onto these casts, I ask for divine guidance. I ask to be a channel. I ask to be truthful, and I connect with my guests. So I connected with you at a higher level, and I asked that we have an open discussion to help and show oneness throughout the world. Please give me that. And then you come on, Rex, and you say about the Council of 9.
Yes.
And I think, oh, somebody was listening. We made that connection, and I sincerely believe that. Now, what I wanted to, I know we've only got 50 minutes, but you were speaking about insect characters that you saw. We are told that something called the World Emergency of 1972, where there were some aliens that came in, and they were taking the energy from level 5, sorry. They were taking spiritual energy off of level 5, which is a very high level, which is putting the whole of Earth out of balance. But they weren't belligerent. They needed this energy for their own home world. They saw it here, and so they were siphoning it off. Now, we were told here that they didn't appreciate the mortal danger which they were putting the inhabitants of Earth. Now, our communicators they wouldn't communicate. There was no communication channel. They had to sort of get shepherded away. But it says here, what was the question? This is, what were these alien invaders like in appearance and characteristics? Okay, this is the answer. They were very small, about 4 or 5 inches long, and ant-like in build. They were metalloid creatures, very heavy and capable of moving at colossal speeds.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So I'm sorry, I just wanted to just tip that in, just because I love to make little connections like with personal experiences, because it makes it's almost like the neural links are already there for you to go out, and I don't know what that's going to bring in, but it seemed important for me to share that with you at this stage.
Can I just take the last few minutes of the show?
I'm a 5 life path.
Huh?
My number 5 is my life path number.
Oh, don't start getting numerology again, Deborah.
We brought up the 5, so yeah, I was like, 5 life path. Interesting.
Let me just share my screen here, because before we came on, I was listening to your last video, and you were talking about time, and you talked about height, breadth, and length. We're in a 3D.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a 3D, and then because we talk about realms for different realms, some people talk about dimensions, with the 4th dimension being another realm, but we use the term realm to mean other realms, and then dimensions is we're in 7 dimensions of creation. So the 4th dimension is time, the 5th dimension is motion, 6th dimension is mind, and 7th is divine will. So we exist in a, and then we also synchronicity. You were talking about spirits, divine powers, spark of God. I could send this to you after the show. I know we're almost out of time, but
that'd be great.
Just how it links with the chakras and height, breadth, length, time, motion.
Well,
you know what's really cool? Can I bring something up with this real quick? So the
Sure.
chakras, if you take all this chakras right here and you add up all 7 chakras, first what you do is you take the 1 through the 6 and you add up all those chakras. And the way that you do it is each chakra has a certain amount of petals on it. So if you take the first 6 chakras and you add them all up, you get a total of 144. The top chakra, which is above the head, which is considered like the highest chakra, is 1,000 petal lotus. And you will find this even in the ancient mythology. So you take the 6 chakras, you get 144. You times it by the top chakra, which is 1,000. You get 144,000, which would by many consider, well, what, there's 144,000 chosen ones, right? In the Bible. I believe what they're talking about is having your body fully activated with all your chakras in full. You're now at 144,000 petals of the light body.
Interesting, because I thought that the lotus was 998 petals. And I'm going to have to check that out myself now. I'm going to do some homework on that. But yes, but 144 is definitely a light code as far as sacred geometry is concerned.
Let's see here. I just typed this in. Chakras. Yeah, crown chakra is 1,000 petals. Root chakra.
Okay.
So you take the root chakra to the 3rd eye, and you get 144 petals. And then you take the crown chakra, multiply the 144 by 1,000, you get 144. which is referenced in the Bible. And it's, and people think that there's only 144,000 people that are going to be chosen as far as certain religions. And let's get this symbolically. And your light body, maybe that's how we leave the matrix. Maybe that's truly what the ancients knew, is if you could activate all your chakras and fully activate everything, whether they did it with technology or mind or
Well,
both.
that's the sixth freedom. You know, you raise Kundalini. I mean, you open the crown chakra. You know, that's
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And
Kundalini
people that have done
Upshashumra.
that,
Yeah.
it changes their lives, right?
Well, they haven't. You have, if you do it once, it's enlightenment. I think if you could do it continuously, it's I'm messing this up, but once you can do it, raise it up consciously, you know, and ascend, that's a much bigger deal than just getting a raise of Kundalini. You know, that's it's a world of difference.
Yeah.
As opposed to become a master of it, being able to take it up and down at will means that
At
you
will,
can
yeah.
vibrate at any of the levels, travel between any of the levels we've got. And once you've gone above all the levels of Earth, you can travel anywhere in the solar system and beyond.
That's what I.
So yes,
that's
I think
very
believe
similar to my theory.
what you're saying is right. Yeah, I mean what I'm saying is it marries close enough. But I'm itching somewhere to find out where I saw that 998 petals. So I will
disinformation
investigate
site.
and email you.
you
Battle
you
of the
saw it on a
numbers.
site that they didn't know how to count up all the petals, because it's literally, I'm looking at it and I just double checked. It says chakra 7, the crown chakra, Sahasrara, located at the top of the head. It is associated with knowledge, consciousness, fulfillment, and spirituality. Its element is thought, and it has 1,000 petals. And it's, what else is interesting is it's violet. It's in violet, right? Which is the highest vibrational color. Even science, like if you look at the vibration of that color, it is the highest vibrational color there is. The lowest is red.
Yeah.
And the ancients knew that also. How did they know that?
Well, tell about you heating up the metal. Just finish on that, Deborah. Don't do a short one,
Okay.
because we're out of time.
Okay, here we go. If you just look at it in nuts and bolts, if you get a piece of metal and you heat it up and you watch to see what happens, you'll find that the metal starts off with a very deep red orange, and as it gets hotter, it actually raises up the color spectrum, and you will find that very deep red turns to orange, turns to yellow, turns to a greeny bluey color, and then turns to white violet. And that's the hotter, so the higher the vibrations, because heat, as it heats up, it gets, the vibrations are higher. And so it's there for us to see, play it in plain sight, just by heating a piece of metal. Just go and look at any YouTube and you will see that. And I just love things like that. It's the way that I make sense of the world.
Brilliant. I like that. That's fantastic. See, the ancients know what's up. Nowadays we got to get on our phone and we got to be like, I got to look it up. But they knew they weren't they weren't dummies. They didn't need GPS on their phone. They could get there.
Go to the higher levels. They could raise it up, see what was going on in the higher minds, bring down that information, and then just know it. And nobody could tell them otherwise.
With your
right.
projection, Rex, you've done it spontaneously, but you can develop that with yogic practices, and you can go to Mars yourself if you need permission. But
let's go. I'm ready to go. I want to go hiking out there. It'll be awesome.
Leave the physical body.
Yeah, I've done it, man. I studied it for a while. 90-day guide to astral projection. I got into that stuff. I had some fun experiences, and I haven't had an OBE in quite a while, but it's one of my favorite things to do. So every time I've had one, it's there's not much like it. It makes you realize you're more than your physical body.
Yeah, that's a great note to end on. Well, where can people find out more about you and follow you?
Leak Project, LEAK Project. We're on Patreon and YouTube. Got over 4,500 podcasts. So we talk about a lot of cool things. And thank you so much for the opportunity. I had a great time speaking with both of you. And wow, you really, I felt that, Deborah. Thank you so much. That was, we have a cool connection, and let's do a podcast in the future. I'd love to have you guys back on, and we could maybe even talk about the Council of Nine. Maybe that's what we should talk about.
Whoa.
Hello.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Maybe we can put some numerology in there as well. That would be something.
Yes.
Yeah, fabulous.
Be honored.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right,
Okay,
Rex, thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, been wonderful.
Absolutely.
care, mate.
Be the change you want to see.
Bring it on.
Right on.
Bye-bye. And if people want to hear more about the Aetherius Society, they can go to aetherius.org. Thanks for joining us.